In the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains, where the wind howls like a grieving widow and the trees seem to whisper secrets older than time, there lies a forgotten village called Vyrkolak. Its name, derived from an ancient tongue, means the place of the beast. No map marks its existence, and those who stumble upon it rarely leave to tell the tale. This is the story of the demon known as Chernovog, the Black Flame, whose malevolence has seeped into the earth for millennia, and the cursed souls who dared to disturb its slumber. Long before the rise of empires, when the world was young and the veil between realms was thin, Chernovog was born from the wrath of a forgotten god. This deity, spurned by its kin, poured its vengeance into a single entity, a demon of fire and shadow, whose very presence withered life. Chernovog was no mere spirit. It was a force of annihilation, capable of twisting minds, corrupting flesh, and unraveling the fabric of reality. Its eyes, said to glow like twin embers, could see into the soul, exposing every fear, every sin. Its voice was a cacophony of screams, each one a stolen life. For centuries, it roamed the earth, leaving behind trails of desolation, villages reduced to ash, forests turned to stone, and rivers that ran red with blood. The ancient tribes of the Carpathians, desperate to contain Chernovog's rampage, devised a ritual to bind it. They chose a sacred grove, deep in the mountains, where the earth pulsed with primal energy. 7 shamans, the wisest and bravest of their people, gathered under a blood-red moon. They carved runes into the trunks of ancient oaks, runes that bled sap like wounds. They chanted incantations in a language that burned their throats, offering their own blood to seal the pact. At the ritual's climax, they lured Chernovog into a stone circle, where the earth itself seemed to scream. With their combined power, they trapped the demon within a massive obsidian monolith, its surface polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting the stars above. The monolith was buried deep beneath the grove, and the shamans swore an oath. No one must ever disturb the site, lest Chernovog be unleashed. The grove became taboo, a place shunned by all. Over time, the tribes faded, their stories reduced to whispers. The grove was forgotten, and Vyrkolak sprang up nearby, its people unaware of the horror sleeping beneath their feet. But Chernovog was not truly gone. Even in its prison, it dreamed, malevolent, endless dreams that seeped into the world above. The villagers began to notice strange things: crops that withered despite fertile soil, children born with eyes that seemed too old, and shadows that moved against the wind. They called it the sickness of the earth, but none dared to dig too deep, for fear of what they might find. Centuries passed, and Vyrkolak became a place of superstition. The elders spoke of the Black Flame, a force that haunted the woods, though they could not say why. They warned against venturing too far into the forest, especially near the grove, which was now a tangled mass of thorns and gnarled trees. But in the autumn of 1823, a stranger arrived in Vyrkolak, a scholar named Elias Vorn, a man obsessed with the occult. Elias was gaunt, with hollow cheeks and eyes that burned with a feverish intensity. He claimed to be studying ancient folklore, but his true purpose was darker. He had uncovered fragments of a text, the Codex Tenebris, which spoke of Chernovog and the power it could grant to those who freed it. The text described a ritual, one that required blood, fire, and a willing sacrifice. Elias believed he could control the demon, bending its power to his will. The villagers were wary of Elias, but he charmed them with gifts of coin and promises of knowledge. He took up residence in an abandoned mill at the edge of the village, where he pored over his notes by candlelight, muttering in languages no one recognized. He began to ask questions about the grove, probing for details the elders were reluctant to share. When they refused to help, he turned to the young and curious, spinning tales of hidden treasure buried in the forest. Among those he swayed was a girl named Mara, barely 16, with a restless spirit and a hunger for something beyond the confines of Vyrkolak. Mara was an outcast, shunned for her strange dreams, visions of fire and eyes in the dark. Elias saw her as the perfect tool, sensing that Chernovog's influence had already touched her. He convinced her to guide him to the grove, promising her a share of the treasure. One moonless night, they slipped into the forest, carrying a shovel, a lantern, and a leather-bound book inscribed with symbols that seemed to writhe in the flickering light. The grove was unnaturally silent, the air heavy with the scent of decay. The thorns parted for them as if guided by an unseen hand, and Mara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn cold. At the heart of the grove, they found the stone circle, its runes still faintly visible, though weathered by time. Elias's hands trembled as he consulted the Codex Tenebris, chanting words that made Mara's head throb. He began to dig, and the earth resisted, as if clinging to its secret. Hours passed, and Mara grew uneasy, her dreams flashing before her eyes, flames, screams, and a voice that whispered her name. At last, they struck something hard, the obsidian monolith, its surface gleaming like liquid night. Elias laughed, a sound that was more madness than joy, and traced the runes with his fingers. He told Mara to cut her palm and let her blood drip onto the stone, claiming it was part of the ritual. She hesitated, but the voice in her head grew louder, urging her to obey. As her blood touched the monolith, the ground shook. The runes glowed red, and a sound like 1,000 voices crying out filled the air. Elias continued his chant, unaware that he was no longer in control. The monolith cracked, and from the fissure emerged a shadow that burned, a formless mass of fire and darkness, with eyes that pierced the soul. Chernovog was free, and its wrath was boundless. It turned on Elias first, enveloping him in flames that did not consume but twisted. His screams were cut short as his body contorted, his bones snapping and reforming into something inhuman. Within moments, he was no longer Elias, but a vessel for the demon's will, a grotesque puppet with ember eyes. Mara ran, her mind fracturing under the weight of what she had seen. Chernovog's laughter followed her, a sound that burrowed into her bones. She stumbled back to Vyrkolak, babbling about the grove and the demon. The villagers, gripped by fear, locked her in the church, believing her possessed. But Chernovog was already among them. That night, the village descended into chaos. Shadows moved through the streets, whispering to the sleeping, planting seeds of paranoia and rage. Neighbors turned on each other, driven by visions of betrayal. Fires erupted without cause, consuming homes and leaving behind no ash, only blackened bones. By dawn, Vyrkolak was a graveyard. The few survivors fled, never to return. Mara was found in the church, her body unharmed but her mind gone, her eyes fixed on something no one else could see. She spoke only once, in a voice that was not her own. The black flame burns eternal. The survivors took her to a distant monastery where she was locked away, her ramblings dismissed as madness. The grove was sealed off, declared cursed by the church, and Vyrkolak was erased from memory. But Chernovog did not vanish. It retreated to the shadows, its power diminished but not destroyed. It waits, as it always has, for another fool to seek it out, another soul to tempt with promises of power. The grove still stands, hidden in the Carpathians, its thorns sharper than ever. Hikers who venture too close report strange sensations, whispers in the wind, a feeling of being watched. Some never return, their fates unknown. The Codex Tenebris is said to have survived, passed from one obsessed scholar to another, its pages calling to those who crave the forbidden. And deep beneath the grove, the monolith remains, its cracks sealed but not healed. Chernovog dreams, and its dreams are hungry. They reach out, seeking the next to bear its mark, the next to set it free. For the black flame does not die, it only waits, and the world is full of those who will listen to its call.